here. So, hello, everyone, and welcome to the first of our six-part investment education webinar series. We want to thank all of you for coming today and hope that everyone here gets a chance to leave today with a little bit better understanding of investments. My name is Christopher Tritt. I'm a CFP professional and a financial planner here at Illumination Wealth. I'm joined by Penny Jones. She's another CFP professional and associate financial planner here at Illumination Wealth. Throughout this webinar series that we have planned, again, 6 parts throughout the rest of this year, you'll have a chance to meet even more of our highly educated financial planning team here at Illumination Wealth. But today, we just want to go over a brief introduction to investing that'll give us a strong base of knowledge that we can build upon throughout those future webinars. So just a couple notes on housekeeping before we get into all of the good stuff today is features of this webinar. So for those of you attending, there's going to be 2 main things. The first we've talked about already a little bit. That's going to be those polls and quizzes. Those should just pop up front and center on your screen when we send those out throughout our presentation today. Second one is going to be Q&A, or questions and answers. Should see that at the bottom of your screen. We want to encourage you, if you have any questions that pop up during the presentation today, go ahead and send those in that question and answer section. Just go ahead, you'll type in your question there, submit it to Penny and I, and at the end of our webinar today, we'll try and go through a lot of those questions and get those answered for everyone. As an appreciation for you sticking around to the end, we'll get to answer those questions live for you. There will also be some email addresses at the end where maybe you come up with a question 5 minutes after the webinar ends, where you can feel free to send Penny and I an email, and we can get back to you with an answer to those questions as well. So we are a big fan of polls and getting everyone engaged here. So we do want to start off with our first real poll here, as it were. So first real poll question of the day. You should see it popping up right now. How many of you are currently saving up for something that you really want to buy? If you are, what is your plan to save up enough money for that? Now, we're not looking for the most complete answers here. Just a short answer will do. Just maybe what you're saving up for and what's your plan to save up for it, whether it be bank account or a shoebox under your bed, something like that. Just give us a brief, short answer there. While everyone is replying in here, Penny, I actually want to pass the question on to you. What was something that you really wanted as a kid that you had to save up for it? And what did you do to save up for that?
That's a good question, Christopher. Let's see. Going back, I remember when I was in high school, leather jackets were just all in style. And there was one leather jacket that was at a department store, and I would go there, I would try it on, but it cost a lot of money. It cost over $100, which back in the day, that was a lot for me. And so I really, really wanted it, but I couldn't afford it. But I had a small job on the side. So what I would do is every time I got paid, I would go into the store, and they had a thing called layaway. So they would put it in the back and hold, and they would take my payment. And every time I got paid, I would go give it to the lady and have to walk out without my jacket. And it took 3 pay cycles until I got to take it home. And it was like one of the best days, so much that I still have that leather jacket in my closet. It meant so much to me that I had to save for it, and I aimed for it, and I was working for it. But yeah, so that was one of my big items back in the day.
Wow. Well, as much as I wish we had the time for you to go run to the closet, get that leather jacket and try it on to show all of us, we won't have you go through all of that right now. I do want to take a look at some of the answers here that we got to the poll. Thank you, everybody who took a moment to add in your answers right there. Now, we're not gonna call out anybody here with the answers. We just want to take a look at some of the options. We've got a couple people writing in looking fund a Roth IRA. That's great. That's really exciting. So already a little bit of knowledge I see there on investments. Looking forward to talking about a little bit of that today. Um, Having enough to have a home. Yeah, that's a great goal to have. Um, Saving up, just old-fashioned way, saving up working at their job. All makes sense. A new truck, a new car, all great things. So what we want to talk about today is some different ways to supercharge those savings plans to help you reach your goals even faster than you might have otherwise. So without further ado, let's jump into it a little bit here. So a couple things we're going to talk about today. What is investing? Just the real basics of it. Something we like to call the time machine of money, also known as compound growth. What type of investments are there? Some different investment risks, something you may be hearing a lot about recently. What is inflation? A term that's definitely being talked about a lot today. Some different investment accounts. And then finally, just some options to get started. What are those first steps that you can take on to just get started? So, very, very basic level here. What is investing and why should you care? So, for someone that has no idea what the term investing is, maybe you've heard it a lot, but haven't really gotten a chance to ask what it is. Investing is just a way to put your money to work for you. So, by investing, you're going to be using your money to purchase things that you believe will grow in value over time. This is usually things like stocks or bonds, maybe real estate, or even buying into another type of business. Now, the growth of these investments build each year that you stay invested. So a big thing we're going to be talking about today is the power of your investments. And the earlier you start investing in your life or in your career, the more power your investments are going to have. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, this sounds really similar to how I'm saving money in my bank account, just putting money into your savings account every single month from your job. Let's take a look at those two options, saving money in a bank account versus investing, and how those two things compare over time. Now, I'm going to get the next poll set up here that'll kind of lead us into this. And Penny will go over the question here in just a second.
Are you ready? All right, so the question is, if you save $10,000 in a bank account versus putting that $10,000 and invest it and it grows at 10% per year, which account would grow faster? That is the question we're asking. So you have 50-50 chance on this one. So go ahead and put your vote in and let's see what the results are.
And just to be clear, not meant to be a trick question, not meant to be confusing, just want to get a baseline of where everyone is at and move forward from there throughout the day today.
Do you think that you will have more in your bank account after you in your bank savings account, or do you think that you'll have more in when you invest it? Which one would have the greater balance? Are the results in, Christopher?
The results are in, and it looks like we've got some very smart individuals in our attendees today. So, share some results here. 10 out of the 10 people that answered said investing at a 10% growth rate. So that is
Awesome.
exactly correct. That is the right answer, but we're going to go over a little bit more as to why that is and some of the math behind just how big of a difference it is.
Right, exactly. So why does investing beat savings. So is putting money into my bank account considered investing? The answer is no. It's actually savings. So those are two different words. A lot of people use them interchangeably, and we want to make sure you understand the difference between saving and investing. Now, although saving money at your bank is important, your money will grow at a slower pace than typical investments. I did a little research before we got prepared for this webinar, and it turns out that some banks are only offering an interest rate of 0.01%. In comparison, this is 1,000 times smaller than the 10% interest rate from our earlier example. So that's a big difference between what the savings account is earning and what the investment is earning. So sometimes a visual helps us see things a little bit differently. So I'm going to throw a chart up here real fast. So this is the $10,000 that we or you put into the account. And if you notice the red dash mark is growing at 0.01%. After 10 years, you have earned $10. However, in comparison, at 10% growth, that same $10,000, day one, you put it in there and you forgot about it. After 10 years, it starts growing and growing and growing. And you have more than $25,000, almost $26,000 is in that account, and you didn't do anything. You put it in there and you let it grow. So that is a great example of why investing beats savings. But let's look at, I don't know the ages that we're dealing with, if you're like 12, 13, 15, if you're, so looking 10 years out, you just graduated college, you're 25 years old, 10 years, you now have 26,000. What if you put it in there and you wait a little longer? Let's see what happens. 30 years. Let's go out 30 years. Look at this. So we were right here. This is where we were. And just in that savings account, you put the 10,000 in, you didn't touch it. Now you have $30 that you earned by not touching it. But if you invested it, look at this amazing curve. Look how much it's growing. How much did it end up with? Almost $175,000. That is a huge growth with all that work you didn't do. You just put it in there. So it's a great reminder that when you invest early and invest consistently, of why investing will always beat savings.
Now,
So
this growth that Penny was just talking about on your investment over 10 or even 30 years is called compound growth. Sometimes we like to call it the time machine of money. Now, this growth, this compound growth, is what turns $10,000 into $26,000 without needing to save a dollar more over 10 years. The earlier you start, the bigger the impact you can have on your investing. So, how do we get started investing? Well, you can invest in many different things, but the most common that people talk about is through something called stocks or owning a small piece of a company. Now, here's where I think is another great opportunity for another great question. So we're going to pop up another poll here for you. What is one brand or company that you love? If you could own a piece of it, would you? So this could be companies like Apple, company known for making the iPhone that you are probably very familiar with. Could be Starbucks, that place that you like to stop for morning coffee every day if you had the chance. Could be Microsoft, the maker of the computer that you're using right now. Really, almost any company that you could think of could be something that you could invest in. So if you have a second, answer the poll here. What's one brand or company that you love? And if you could own a piece of it, would you? Doesn't need to be half the company, just one share, one piece of stock counts as investing in that company. Now, while all of you are thinking of your answers, Penny, I'm going to put you on the spot one more time here. What was the first company that you invested in?
Let me think. The first company that I remember investing in was some stock I actually was gifted from my grandfather, and it was stock into GE, or at the time, which was known as General Electric. And so I thought that was a big deal. I was jumping into finance. I probably was 8 years old. I was really young. So I remember that gift that he gave us, but I didn't know what to do with it. And so I asked, how do I know how much it's worth? And oddly enough, back in the day, the only way I could look to see how much GE was worth is to get the paper newspaper and open it up, and I would go and they would have all the stocks, not all of them, but most of the stocks on a page, and I would have to search for GE and then look at it and see what the price, what it closed at. And then I'd have to compare it to previous days. So General Electric was the first stock that I invested in officially, even if though it was a gift.
Now, Penny, I do feel obliged to ask, because we heard about the leather jacket earlier, do you still have these shares of the stock in GE?
Actually, I do not. So
Do not.
GE changed a lot, and that I'm not going to say my age, but we'll just say there's been a lot of changes through the decades. We'll throw that word out there. And because of that, I felt it was better to invest in other businesses.
Understandable, but you understand why I had to ask.
Yes, it's not in the closet. I don't have the stock certificates in the closet. You're good.
Got it. Okay, so I just want to go over a couple of the responses here that we got from people. Looks like we've got some people interested in Amazon. That's a great example of a company you can own that you may use all the time or really, really love. Some people saying Apple. That's a very common one that we get a lot of. People love the Mac and iPhones and that whole system. Nvidia in there, that's another really popular example nowadays, always in the news. Volcom making an appearance in there. All of these are great options for companies. So be thinking of these as we go further, because there's going to be, at the very end, some next steps we provide where you guys can actually get involved and actually have the opportunity to buy some of those stocks for yourself. And like Penny, keep an eye on where those prices go every so often as it grows over time. So we want to talk about a couple of the different investment options that we've presented already. So first one, like we were talking about, is going to be stocks. And this is owning a small piece of an otherwise much bigger company. Things like Apple, Nike, Tesla, and these investments grow as the business grows. So as the business continues to become bigger and bigger, so does your investment. Second one is going to be something called bonds. These are a little bit different than stocks. Instead of investing in the business directly, bonds would be like giving your money to companies with the promise of the companies paying you back with an additional bit of interest on top. So that's how these tend to grow over time. That interest the company pays back to you kind of keeps growing, compound growth, as we were talking about, keeps growing on itself over the years. These investments are a little less risky than stocks, but earn a more reliable interest rate each year that you stay invested. Real estate. This is just owning land or buildings that you can then rent out to people or businesses for them to use for a period of time. Normally, you would collect some type of rent from the business or that individual for them getting the ability to use the land or buildings that you own. And finally, we won't dive too much into these today because we don't want to steal some thunder from our later webinars that we have coming up. But there's things that are kind of bulked into alternative investments. See, these don't really fall into the other three categories. And these are normally higher risk investments where you have a larger chance of potentially losing money, but you can also have the greatest potential reward from investing. These investments can be things like artwork or even cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. Some of you may be well aware of Bitcoin. Some of you may have no background with Bitcoin whatsoever. Those, again, we won't get into because we don't want to step on the toes of some later webinars, but we did want to bring it up today because it is an option when it comes to investing. So this graph here actually shows some of that compound growth we were talking about earlier. Instead of $10,000, this is $100, starting back in 1970, and this only runs through 2023. But that's 53 years of compound growth, starting from $100. And we wanted to talk about a couple of the options here. So, Penny, if you'll trace that pink line, that's going to be an idea of some corporate bonds. So those are bonds in companies like we were talking about. So you can see it started from $100 and because of compound growth grew to almost $8,000. That orange line, if you'll trace it for us, Penny, that's the S&P 500. And we don't want to, again, get too much into the weeds here, but the S&P 500 represents the biggest 500 companies in the United States. So notice how those stocks really had a lot of growth, very similar to that compound growth we were showing earlier. $100 turns into over $22,000 without having to invest any more money. Now we want to point out the difference here between those two options, the corporate bonds and S&P 500, versus that orange line. That orange line down there at the bottom, that's going to be cash. So cash does have some amount that it grows by keeping it in your savings account or another bank account. But notice how much less it grows than all of those other options we show here. So cash, $956, still more than the 100 you started with, but not anywhere near that 22,000 from the stock market or 7,000 from bonds. So just an example there of how these different investments can grow differently over time.
Great example. Great example. I love the visuals. Thank you, Christopher, for that. So let's talk about investing like a pro. Even though all of these returns are great features and things we want to point out, we need to always remember that regardless of what you are invested in, investing comes with some level of risk. A company that you own stock of can have a bad year. Crypto coins can lose value, and a large storm can damage your house if your investment is in real estate. By owning different kinds of investments, you can reduce your overall risk. This is known as diversification. And again, we're going to pause that word, but make sure you know that word, diversification. But we're going to put a pause on it because we don't want to steal any thunder from future seminars. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to hold my tongue and not dive into that. Go ahead,
Stopping at
Christopher.
such a cliffhanger there, Penny. What is diversification really? Now we want to talk about inflation. This may be something you're hearing a lot of nowadays, either being talked about by your parents or someone else in your life talking about inflation. But what does that really mean? Well, another reason that investing is so important is that it helps prevent losing your purchasing power to inflation. So let's start with a real simple example here. So imagine today you go to the store, you go to Starbucks perhaps, and a cup of coffee costs $4 at your favorite cafe. And say you have $100 in your bank account. Well, that means you can afford to buy 25 cups of coffee. However, each year that you go back to the same coffee shop, you notice the price of coffee goes up by 5%. Now, this is what's known as inflation, or the cost of goods increasing over time. Now, fast forward 1 year from that original $4 cup of coffee, and you'll notice the same cup of coffee now costs $4.20, meaning that that $100 you have in your bank account can only buy 23 cups of coffee instead of 25. Now, that might not seem like a big difference after that 1 year, but same way we were talking about compound growth, it's about the long term and how that costs change. So this is the final poll that we'll send out to you guys. We know that we appreciate all of your coordination here, but we want your guess between a couple options here. If the cost of coffee increases by 5% per year, how much would that $4 cup of coffee cost in 10 years? So that same cup of coffee started at $4. It's growing by 5% per year. How much is that cup of coffee going to cost in 10 years? We don't intend for it to be a math problem too much. No need to get out a piece of paper and a pen and try to figure it out. Just your best guess will do just fine here. So your four options: $5.03, $6.11, $6.52, or $15.01. How much do you think the cup of coffee will cost after 10 years? Again, we're not going to call anyone out for getting the answer right or wrong. Just want to give an example here to show where everyone is at. So just go ahead and click one of those. Penny, I'm not going to kick the question to you because I know you already know the answer. So I won't let you get away with a free one there. Looks like we got most of the people to answer here. Looks like we've got a bit of a mixed bag here. So let me end the poll and I'll share the results here. We had 2 people say $6.11, and then 3 people each on $15.01 and $6.52. So let's go ahead and reveal the answer here, Penny. If you fast forward 10 years, that same cup of coffee would be $6.52, meaning that that $100 you had can now only afford 15 cups of coffee. The same $100 that used to get you 25 cups, you now only get 15 cups of coffee. However, by investing your money, you can grow your money, grow that $100 faster than inflation to stay ahead of those rising prices. That growth in the cost of coffee is 163% of where it originally started. So investing is just so important when it comes to beating inflation over the long term.
That's super impressive, Christopher. I mean, first of all, the cup of coffee today hypothetically costs $4. And then it's going to grow that amount. Imagine if it was a pair of shoes that cost $100. How much will shoes cost at inflation? That's something very important to be aware of and to figure out what you can do now in order to prepare for it. Well, as an example, that $10,000 you put in was worth $26,000. That will still get you your coffee in the morning. Very, very important. I'm very particular about coffee, and I think some of our attendees are also. So great example. I appreciate that. All right, let's jump to places that we can actually put our money so that it can grow. You can't just call up Apple and say, hey, Apple, I want to put some money in your account and to let it grow. There's actually a process and strategy for where you put it and why you put it. So we're going to go through, again, this is the basic of investing, but we're going to go through 3 different investment account options. So we're going to start with the 401k. You may have heard this. You may have heard your parents talk about it. They have different letters and numbers involved with it, and it has to do with the IRS code and all this complicated, but everybody knows it as 401k. So what is a 401k? A 401k is a place where you can take some of your money that you earn through a job and you put it aside into retirement savings. So you're saving it for retirement. Basically, they take a little chunk out of your paycheck and put it aside. You, for the most part, get to say how much you want to put aside. Now, there's a limit. You can't just say, I want to put all of it aside. There's a limit of how much you can, but we'll cover that in future sessions also. So it is a retirement savings through your job. Some of the benefits of the 401k is if you put money away through your paycheck, there's a way you can do it and not have to pay income taxes on it today. You basically get a little bit of credit back and saying, hey, I don't have to pay taxes on it today. And then later when you pull it out, that's when you're going to pay taxes. So you kind of can manipulate or time the time you're going to pay taxes now or later. Because it is a retirement account, though, they have restrictions. And one of the restrictions is you cannot pull that money back out until you're age 59 and a half. To say that, if in case of emergency, if you needed to pull it out, you would have to do a penalty. Some of the penalties could be it's taxable and 10%. So it's very much not encouraged to pull any money out before you're 59 and a half. Again, you put the money in for retirement, so you're saving it for your retirement. So that's 59 and a half. Let's move on to an IRA. You probably have heard that mentioned before. The IRA stands for an individual retirement account. And similar to a 401k, it is putting money aside now into retirement. But instead of it going through your company or where you get your paycheck, you can do it directly. So you would work with your financial advisor and say, hey, I want to put some money aside to an IRA. And there's a limit of how much you can do per person. But you can go ahead and start saving that money now to let it grow and all that time until you're ready for retirement. There's basically two types of IRAs. One is called a traditional IRA, and that's where you say, I'm putting money in now and I'll pay for taxes later. I'm not going to worry about the tax impact until I need it. Then there's another one that has the word Roth IRA, and I believe that was one of the answers in one of our first polls. Someone was already like, what are you saving for? Roth IRA. So super impressive. I want to know who you are. You don't have to tell me, but you're more than welcome to. That was just a great answer. So the Roth IRA, and how is it different? It just means when you pay taxes. So the Roth IRAs, you're paying taxes today. Whatever your tax rate is for this tax year, when you put money in, you're paying the taxes now. And then when you are older and you're retired, you don't have to pay any taxes on it. So it grew and you don't have to put any taxes on it. So basically you're just saying taxes now or taxes later. Again, because they're retirement accounts, you're limited to access until age 59 and a half. Those penalties for early withdrawals, there's all these other restrictions, but those are two different ways to save for retirement. Then the last category we're going to talk about is a brokerage account, sometimes called a taxable account. And in this account, you can invest for anything, not just retirement. So if you're wanting to buy a house or you're wanting to go to college or anything of the sort, you want to save money to put into a business. And so you're investing money now. So when 10 years from now, you're ready to purchase that business or start a business, you can go ahead and put it in a brokerage or taxable account. There's no special tax benefits to this. Officially, you kind of get a capital gains, which we'll cover in future sessions. But when you take the money out, you don't have to wait till you're 59 and a half. You have full access to the money. But when you take the money out or you actually sell, like when I sold that GE stock, I had to pay taxes on it. So I had to pay it right then. I didn't get to defer the taxes to later or change my holdings within the account. So those are three different ways or three different types of accounts in general of ways that you can save and invest, places you can put it. So I don't see any questions. If you have any questions, once again, there's a Q&A set button on your screen. and you're more than welcome to ask a question. We'll have time at the end to ask them. But let me see. Yep, nobody has put anything in yet, but feel free to. All right, and then I'm going to jump to the next screen, which is our summary. So we're going to kind of go over everything that Christopher and I covered, and we tried to cover it in the basic of investing. So let's start. Said investing is a way to put your money to work for you. It's all about you and your goals. At one point, Christopher did a great job pointing out the earlier you start, the bigger the impact. And even small amounts can grow huge if given enough time. You can invest in many different things. You can invest in stocks, bonds, real estate, and more. There's lots of different areas where you can invest, but investing always comes with some level of risk. So we want to be aware of that and not think, oh yeah, it's all easy peasy, put it in there and it'll grow. There's a little bit of risk. Every company and every investment has a little bit of risk, and you want to make sure you understand those risks. Through investing, you can grow your money faster than inflation to stay ahead of rising prices. Anytime you hear the word inflation, I want you to think back to the coffee cup example Christopher put, because coffee is important. Now, it could be tea, whatever your choice of beverages, go for it. Just think about it, but think how small that one little item has a big impact in 10 years. And finally, we want to consider the goals of your investment when deciding what account type to use. Do you want to put money for retirement and you want it to grow as much as possible? Or do you want to put it to grow or to invest for a business or a more short-term goal? So those are all factors of the basic investing that we want to make sure you're aware of and that you consider when investing. All right, give them the homework, Christopher.
Always got to make me out to be the bad guy, Penny. I I argued against the word homework, but we're gonna call it homework. Now that we've talked about all of the great base understanding you have of investing, we want to encourage you to get started, not just wait on this knowledge and think, when we get through all of the seminars, all the webinars, then I'll start. We want to encourage you to get started this week or even next week. Just get your first baby step. So your first investment challenge is here. So we want to challenge each and every person that came to the webinar today to do one of these things. So the first one would be to open your first brokerage account. Now, if you are under the age of 18, definitely talk to your parents before going and doing this. You want to make sure they're with you. They can do it online right next to you and get this started with their help to get going. But talk to your parents about opening that first taxable brokerage account. Some different places you can do that: Schwab, Fidelity, Vanguard, even Robinhood is a usable option for you. Whichever one of those that either you're more familiar with, maybe your parents already have an account open with one of them, and you can join them and get started with as little as $10, whether that's from Tooth Fairy or mowing lawns or shoveling snow, whatever your job might be, getting started with as little as $10. And then going back to our earlier poll, that one company that you're a fan of, you can purchase a small amount of their stock. As little as $10, you can buy a small part of that company that you love and watch it grow as that company grows. So whether that's Apple, whether that's Volcom, whether that's Costco, any of these options, you can get involved with their stock and own a little piece of that company. Another option, maybe we really struck a chord talking about the different investment topics, some different investment options. Here's a couple other things that you could look up over the next week, get a bit more information. Look up index funds. That's an interesting way to invest in a lot of different stocks all at the same time. I promise those two words, Google them, They will pull up a plethora of information for you to get into. You could look up more information on bonds. Maybe you want to understand exactly how those work. Maybe real estate. Maybe the idea of buying a piece of land or property that you could rent out to someone is really interesting to you. Maybe go and look up some information on real estate. Another option, go online and take a look at the power of compound growth. Find a compound growth calculator and calculate if you saved $10 a month for 10 years straight and it was growing at 10% interest. Maybe you have an idea in your head about just how much that grows to, but I promise the first time that I did it, I was blown away. Now, this was a number of years ago before I got this deep into financial planning and financial advising, but you may be surprised just how big $10 a month grows over time. Now, we kept saying it all throughout the webinar today, and I'm gonna hit it one more time here. The earlier you start, the bigger the impact you can have. So take action now, because your future self will thank you in the long run.
Excellent, excellent points. Yeah. The $10 a month, agreed. 100% agreed. Blew my mind too. So I hope that some of y'all are able to use some of these homework sessions. Do them all. We'll even give you extra credit if you do it all. We will report back to your parents and say, yes, they need a raise. They may not have snow, but maybe clean out the pool. I'm not sure what they could do to earn it, but we will definitely, you email us and show us what you did. We're going to make sure your parents know and that you get extra credit for it. Whatever that means.
Absolutely.
Maybe it'll be a cup of
Absolutely.
coffee.
So we want to take a second here to remind you before we wrap up that the next webinar coming up is going to be April 10th. So got a little bit of time to prepare. We'll make sure the same way you heard about this webinar will be how you can hear about the next one. But take a second right now. If you got a piece of paper, write it down. If you need to put it in your phone, totally fine too. April 10th, 2025 is going to be the next webinar, and that's going to be the basics of the stock market. There's going to be a lot of good information in there, but maybe, just maybe, we've got your motor running on investing and you want to dive in more now. So we want to give you guys a couple other options that you can keep learning if this has really sparked something inside of you. So 2 books, you can do an audio book, you can do the physical copy, whatever you prefer. 2 books that you could read. I Will Teach You to Be Rich. That's by Ramit Sethi. And a more classic book would be The Richest Man in Babylon by George Clausen. Those are 2 great books if books are more your speed. If podcasts are more your speed and you just want to get on your phone, put your headphones in, and on the bus or on the train or in the car, you want to be listening to some more information about investing and personal finance, 2 great options, The Money Guy Show and How to Money. I think How to Money is such a fun name. It really tries to simplify down all of these topics and just how do you money? How do you go through and deal with money? So both of those great podcast options for you to choose from. As well here, maybe you're just very excited, want to go ahead and register right away for that next webinar. I'm going to go ahead and put the link in the chat here. You should see that available. If you want to follow that link, enter your information and get registered right now. You're definitely welcome to do that. Just follow the link in the chat. If you want to wait and get the information through email or LinkedIn, however you heard about us for this information, we can go ahead and do that as well when the time comes.
So Christopher, if you sign up now, will you get an email reminder that it's about it, that the webinar is coming up so that you remember it?
Absolutely, Penny. Same way
Excellent.
as you may have noticed with this webinar, you started as it got closer, started to get those reminders. The same thing would happen. So if you register now, there's no commitment to actually come on April 10th, as much as we'd love for you to be there. But go ahead, sign up now. You'll get those reminders in your email as it gets closer, and you'll get the 1 hour before, 1 day before reminder much closer to the actual webinar date. Again, April 10th, 2025. There will be 2 fresh faces here for you guys to meet from Illumination Wealth. They're very excited to get a chance to talk with you about the basics of the stock market.
That's great. Yeah, I am a personal fan of automatic reminders, and so that's definitely the way that I'm going to go. So I'm excited. All right, so to close out and follow up, we want to make sure that you are aware of our email addresses. So it's super easy, Christopher@illuminationwealth.com and Penny@illuminationwealth.com. Feel free to email either of us. Again, extra credit, we will let your parents know. But go ahead and email either one of us. And if you have any questions, maybe you want to know more about a certain subject, or that you looked into index funds and you're a little confused on what you found, Google kind of overwhelmed you, reach out to us. We are definitely here to help you, to educate you, to help you gain knowledge, open the account, whatever task you end up doing for your homework, and whatever question you have. So going from that, I do not see any questions. So if you didn't get, we have a little bit of time left. If you didn't get a chance to ask a question and you would like to ask one live, feel free to type that in the Q&A and we can address it. We'll give you a little bit of time, but this was great information, Christopher. Thank you so much for covering it all, doing the basics, not diving too deep in it at this point, which is great. I think it's a great foundation to start with, and we covered a lot of great areas. So I hope everybody decides to go ahead and invest and understand the difference of investing versus savings.
Thank you, Penny. Thank you so much for joining me, Penny. I appreciate your help as always. And thank you to all of you that joined us today as attendees. We understand taking an hour out of your time to join us is a big deal, and we don't want to undersell that. So thank you, thank you, thank you for taking time out of your day to come sit with us, talk about investing, and just start to grow that base level knowledge. So if you do have a question, please feel free to stick around, put it in the Q&A option at the bottom. But if you don't have a question and you have somewhere to be right after this hour, we just want to say thank you once again for joining us. You're welcome to close out of the webinar whenever you're ready. But thank you, thank you, thank you once again for joining us today. And we look forward to you joining us again April 10th for the basics of the stock market. So thank you all so much. Penny and I will stick around a couple more minutes here if you want to put any questions into the question and answer portion.
Stop sharing my screen so that we can stop seeing the guy type. He was just super busy. He had a lot of questions. So yeah, I thought it was really great. I love the charts. I love the coffee example. You know me and coffee. I'm very fond of it, and I think that really hit home for understanding, because it was something basic and knowledgeable. And yep,
Yeah,
my kids would go and get a coffee before school, and so now that they know how much more they need to save so that they can afford the coffee.
so they can keep affording their coffee. Absolutely.
Yes, yes, excellent. All
All
right.
right. It seems like there's no more questions. So again, you're welcome to email us, either Christopher@Illumination Wealth or Penny@illuminationwealth.com. Let us know if you come up with any questions after the fact today. Maybe you're about to fall asleep tonight and that question just jumps into your mind. Send us an email. We're always happy to see those, and always happy to answer any questions that pop up for you. So we'll go ahead and end the webinar here. But we, again, thank you so much for joining us. Penny, thank you so much for joining me and helping me out today. We hope you all have a great rest of your evening. Be well, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us.